how to create a very simple blog with the sketch.io platform. So before we get started, I'm gonna outline what we're going to do here. So first we're going to create a very minimalist, a very simple page, a web page that will hold our content. There's gonna be a header, the content, and the footer. And then we're going to create a data model that will contain the articles of our blog. So this is what's going to contain the blog posts, basically. And then we're going to link the data model with the page so that we can see the list of articles into the home page. And then we're going to create the blog posts actual page. So when you click on the card, you're going to be able to see the full article. So we'll set up that thing as well. So let's get started. So first, I'm going to create the main components of our page. So I'm going to add a header and a content and then a footer. So let's add specific classes for each of these elements. So this one is the header. Then we have the content. And then we have the footer. So I'm gonna change the layout of the body element so that it's gonna be a flex element with a direction, with a column direction. And we're gonna align the elements with stretch. All right, then we're gonna take the content div and give it a flex grow value of 1. This way it's gonna take the full height so that we take the footer and we flush it to the bottom of the page. Now let's add the logo. So I'm gonna add maybe a div text here. All right, and I'm gonna give a title for our blog. It's gonna be my blog. All right, and let's add a little bit of styling. Yeah, I'm gonna add a class. It's gonna be logo. And I'm going to change the font. I'm going to choose this one. Change the size. Maybe even more. All right. And increase the weight. All right. So this is going to be our logo. I'm gonna go back to the header and yeah, so we're gonna add a menu here. So we'll select the header element and we'll choose again here the flex display mode, and this time it's gonna be a row mode, and we're gonna align the elements center, so to the middle. And as for justify, we're gonna use space between. So this will space out the elements of our header with the space being between the elements. Now we're gonna add a menu. All right, so this is the menu. As you can see, it was spaced out from the logo since we've chosen that option. And now let's add some links into our menu. So the first one is just gonna be a very simple, okay, it's gonna be the home or the blog section. I'm gonna just put it inside of the menu. I'm gonna add a class to the menu here. All right, so a menu, and then this is gonna be a menu item. All right. We're gonna add another menu item, so let's duplicate this one and let's call it maybe about. All right, now let's add a little bit more of styling. First, I'm gonna change the font of the body element so that it propagates through all the elements. It's gonna be, I'm gonna choose the OpenSAW font. All right, and now let's add maybe some margin between the menu items here. So it's going to apply to all of them because they both have the menu item class. It's going to be an inner margin. So maybe 8 pixels and 8 pixels, like this. Alright, and we can even add maybe, and we can underline them when they are being hovered. So underline like this. Alright, so it's very simple, nothing too complex. Maybe some margin. So this is the default margin of the div blocks. We're going to remove it, and we're going to apply a margin specifically to the header element to maybe 15 pixels. Alright, maybe 10 pixels here and 10 pixels here. Now let's go back to the body element, and let's maybe we can change the background. So maybe a little gray like this. Then we're gonna play with the footer. So we can first maybe add the logo to the footer again. Alright, so this is gonna be my blog. Alright, and we're gonna apply the same class as before, so logo. Alright, so we see that it took the style. And yeah, so the footer is, let's move the logo inside of the footer like this, and let's select the footer. So now we can do the same thing that we did with the header. So we're going to do a flex, horizontal, align center, and space between. Alright, and then we can add maybe a color to the footer. So maybe a dark color like this, and change the text color to white. Alright, now for the logo here, well, let's add a little bit more margin. So let's remove again the block default margin, which is 5 pixels, and let's apply one specifically to the footer element. So let's put 20 pixels like this. Alright. Now we could add maybe a few, maybe, well, we can add a copyright notice to the footer. Like this. And we can make it wrap here to the bottom. So let's enable the wrap option, and let's take this copyright notice and give it a flex base size of 100%. Alright, so now it wraps, and we can center the content like this. Alright, and let's add now a few social icons right there. So let's add a block element here. Let's move it to be after the logo, and let's add a few icons in there. Now for the icons, usually you want to put them in a link so that you can link to your social media accounts, but since this is just like a demo, we're not going to do that. We're just going to create the icons. So let's add Instagram, and let's add a class, social link. Alright, maybe we can, well, yeah, we can put it inside of this div block that we created, and let's duplicate it a few times. So this one is going to be Facebook, and the first one maybe Twitter. Perfect. Now let's add some margin between the icons. So maybe a inner margin of 3 pixels everywhere, and an outer margin of 5 pixels in both sides. Okay. Now I noticed that the color here, the white that we chose, is a little bit too bright. So let's reduce it a little bit like this. Perfect. We could also change the justify option from space between to space around. And yeah, maybe we can add more text in here, maybe at the center. Something like we like writing about marketing and stuff. Yeah, and we can put this one a little bit smaller. Alright, so we made a very basic footer, a header, and now we have the main content here. For the header, we're also going to add a small border to the bottom. So maybe 1 pixel. It's going to be very subtle. Yeah, like this. So let's save. Let's see what we have right now. I'm going to refresh the page. Alright, so this is what we have at this time. Yeah, I guess we can make the header completely white. Yeah, I think it's better to remove the border and make the header white like this. Alright, much better. Alright, so now we can go into the important stuff. So here we would like to add a card that will contain our blog, the list of our blog posts basically. So let's add a title here for our page. It's going to be latest articles. Alright, we can style it a little bit. Yeah, something like this is great. Alright, so now before we create the cards, we're going to do something, which is that we need to create the data model. So the data model is basically the database that will contain our blog posts, our articles. So let's create a new data model. Let's call it posts. Alright, create model. So now we need to create the fields for our data model. So the first one, the most obvious one, is the title field. So it's the title of our blog posts, and it's going to be a required field. Let's save. These are the default fields that come up with every entry in the database. So every entry has an ID, a date in which it was created, as well as a date of the last modification. So we can add more fields. So the other field that we want to add is going to be the handle. So the handle is basically going to be the URL of our post. So let's put, let's give it a name, handle, like this, and this one is required. Now something important to do here is to go to the advanced options and to click on the index and the unique checkboxes. So unique is because we want every single blog post to have a unique handle. We do not want to have multiple articles with the same URL. So it's unique. And index, this is used to improve the performance of our database retrieval process. So since this field is going to allow us to find this blog post in the database, we need to index this field. So it's a good idea to index fields that we use to retrieve data from the database. You should not index all fields, or it's going to have a bad impact on the performance. So only the fields that you use for searching into the database. So let's save this one. Then we have an author field. All right, required, and save. Then we could add maybe a category field. So maybe if we would like to have different categories for our blog posts, so we could organize them in this kind of categories. So the first one is going to be SEO. This is the text, the visible value, and this is the internal value that will be stored in the database. Then we have maybe advertising, ads, and then maybe branding. Alright, and the default value we can set it to SEO. this one can be required as well. Now, as I said, we can use this to retrieve the posts from the database. For example, you could have an SEO menu, you could have advertising menu, and when you click on SEO or advertising, you want to be redirected into a list of articles that are inside of this category. So we will use this field for search. So let's index this field. All right, now we can add another field, and this time it's going to be the image field. So this is the main image of our blog post. Right, we can change the handle to just image. We could require it. Yeah, I think we can require this field so that all entries in the database need to have a value for this image. And let's save. And finally, the most important field we have is going to be the article. So article, and no need for a default value. This one is required as well. So let's save. So now we have created a database that will contain all of these fields for each and every blog post. So we can save what we've created so far. And now we can click on this eye icon to visualize what's inside of the database. And as you see, you have all the different columns, the entries of our database, and we do not have any entry yet. So we can start creating a few entries for our database now. So a few blog posts, articles. So the first one is maybe the ABC of marketing. The handle is going to be ABC of marketing. So this is going to be the URL. Author, we can put Johnny. Maybe, yeah, SEO. We can upload an image. All right, and then we can write the article. So when you write the article, we are going to use what's called Markdown to format the text of our article. So you can read online how to use Markdown, but it's very simple. You write stuff like a hashtag, and then you can write a heading, and this will be transformed into a HTML text. So the heading is going to be a bold and larger text. Then you can do things like this is a bold and italic text. So these will be bold, this one will be italic, and you can also add a lot of things like list item 1, list item 2, and so on. So this is a very neat way to write articles. And we're going to transform these into actual formatted HTML text. So let's finish and create this first entry. All right, and now let's create another entry. So this one is how to do branding. So how to do branding. Johnny. This one is going to be in branding, and we can choose an image. Let's restart this. All right, and then we can write another article. So all right. Let's create this other article. Perfect. So now we have the two articles in our database, and now what we need to do is to create the cards of the articles in our homepage. So let's do that. So we can create a div block that will contain these cards, and let's call it card wrapper, like this. And inside we can add our cards. So let's add we can do a div block, but we're going to do a link block because the card is going to be a link to our blog post. So let's click on link block, right? And inside here, well, let's add a class. So card, All right, and inside we want to add a few details about the blog post. So maybe the image. All right, so this is too large. Let's let's take the card wrapper and let's change it to a flex element, or we can even do a grid element. Yeah, let's do maybe three columns like this with a grid gap. So this is the separation between the different elements in our grid. So maybe it's going to be 15 pixels, and row gap 15 pixels as well. And yeah, I think we're good. Let's go back. Here we have the image. We can maybe make it a little bit smaller. So let's go to the height, and let's put maybe, yeah, maybe we can put something like 300 pixels. Yeah, so now the image is smaller than the card, so we're gonna set the width to 100%. all right, and we will change the image fit to be cover, so that the image fills the entire area. All right, so let's go back to our card right here, and here we can add now maybe a few elements like the title, the author of the article. So let's add a div text, or maybe a heading too, like this. All right, so this is gonna be blog post title. All right, and let's add now another one here, and this could be, for example, author and date. All right, now let's give a little bit more style to our card. So let's give a background, a white background like this, maybe an inner margin at the bottom, yeah, like this. All right, maybe we can add some radius, so maybe 5 pixels. All right, so here it seems to be working. It's very it's not a lot. Well, let's add a shadow here. All right, it's gonna be very light. Yeah, something like this. All right, so here at the corner, the image overlaps the border radius that we've put on our card. And to solve this, we just need to do the overflow hidden, so that it hides the image that overflows. So the radius really applies on everything beneath. All right, so let's save this and let's refresh our preview. All right. All right, so we can maybe add a few more things to the styling. So here it's too much on the, there's not enough padding. So let's add a little bit. So let's remove the default one again. Let's go back to card wrapper and maybe 20 pixels. All right, and top 10 pixels. All right. All right, so let's go back to our preview, and now it's much better. All right, so now of course there's a big problem, which is that this is just the placeholder card, which is not what we want. What we want is to actually see the list of articles. So what we need to do here is to link this card to the database. So I'm going to show you how to do that. It's very easy. So here you have the page controller, and this is like some kind of visual code that will run before the page load. So every time someone loads the page, this will be executed by Sketch. So let's go to database and use the data retriever module. We need to connect it like this, and then we can configure this module, and we're going to retrieve the data from the posts data model. And for the filtering, you can use the filtering to basically specify specifically which entries you want to retrieve from the database. For now, we just want to retrieve all the blog posts from the database. And then we want to sort the fields using the date created, and we want to sort it descending order. So the newer posts should be on top of the older posts. So let's click on OK. So now we have retrieved the data with this module, and the data is stored into this output. So this is the entries array. This is the output of the data module. So this is our lists of posts, and what we need to do is to store these into a variable. So right click, data processing, set variable. So now we connect it to the value. So this is the value of our variable, and the name of the variable is just going to be posts. All right, so we're done with this. Now we can close this. So now, we have the blog post stored in the posts variable. But what we need to do now is to link the post variable with this card element here. So let's do that. So we select the card element, and in the properties of the element, we can do the loop variable. We're going to use this field to loop through the posts variable. So we're going to put yes here, and the data array variable is the posts variable. So this is the array, the list of posts, and the loop variable is going to contain a single one of these posts. So it's going to loop through these, and at every time it's going to generate a new card. And we're going to use the post value to generate to hold the information for the specific post that we're looping through. Now let's change now inside of this image or this card. We have a few elements, and we want to customize these elements with the post variable. So let's first click on the title, and let's click here to link variable, and here we're going to put post.title. So post is the variable that holds one post entry, and title is the field, the handle of the title field of our data model. So let's link this variable, let's click save, and let's go to our preview. All right, so now we see that here we have generated all two entries, or all two cards, and we see that the title now properly propagates here. So now what we need to do is to do the same with the image, the author, date, and also the link, because this is a link, and we would like to redirect the user to a specific blog post when they click on the link. So let's go to the image, and let's link this to the post.image variable. Then we have the author and the date here. So here we have two fields. One is author and one is date. So what we can do is link it to a variable, and instead of directly typing the variable name, what we can do is type in the equal symbol, and then we can write more of a formula, what we would like this value to be. And what we want to do is to type in the author, and to do that you do it like this. So post.author. So this here is going to be replaced with the author, with the value of the author. Then we have a space, we would like a dash, and then we would like the date. So post dot, here we would like the date it was created, so date created, like this. And as I said previously, this is an internal field. This one is generated automatically by Sketch, so you don't need to manage it yourself. Now the date created has a long format. The format of the data is very complex. So what we want to do is use the relative time filter to show this relative to our time right now. You'll understand very shortly. So we're done with this field. We can link to a variable and we can save this. Now let's go to our preview and now you'll understand what I mean. All right, so as you can see here, this one was created 12 minutes ago. So this is the relative time of creation of this article. We have the images that work, we have the title that works, and now we just need to set up the links. So in our editor, what we need to do now is to create a page that will hold our blog posts. So we're going to create a new page. The title is going to be blog post, and the path, the URL of the page is going to be post /*. Now this is one page, but it's a dynamic page because this page will work for all the blog posts. And in here, inside of the asterisk, this will match with all the blog posts pages, and we'll use this value here to store the handle. So this will be the handle of the blog post, and we'll retrieve the information like that. So let's save this. All right, and now we can click on the actual page we've just created. And now you see that we're missing the header, the footer on the page, and that is because the page is still blank. Now instead of having to create all the header, the logo, and so on from scratch, what we can do is go to the home page and click here on the header element. And in the navigator sidebar, we can click on the small icon to convert it to a component. Now the idea behind the component is that it can be reusable, so we can reuse it in several pages, and if you ever want to modify it, you can modify it on a single page, and it will propagate to all the other pages, which is perfect. So if you ever want to change the logo or the menu, you only do it once and it propagates on all pages. So let's give it a name. All right, and we can do the same thing with the footer. All right, now you can see these are components. You can modify them by double clicking on the component. Now you're inside of the component, you can modify what's inside. So let's go to the blog post page, and now let's add our header and footer components. So it's in the components tab here. Footer, and now we need to add a div block at the center of the page so that it will be our content of the page. So let's add the content class, and let's move it between the header and the footer. Perfect. So now here we have the actual article of a given blog post. So we can add a heading one, and this is going to be the title of blog post. All right, so we're only going to start with this and click on the save button. So now what we need to do is, first we need to link the cards in the home page to redirect to the blog post page. And as you can see here, the format is this one. So /post/ and then here we'll have the handle of the blog post. So we need to click here on the card element, so this is a link, and go to the properties of the link, and in the destination we need to link this to a variable. So you might be tempted to just write post.handle, but the thing is that we need to have the /post/ before. So what we're going to do is put equal /post/ and then you add your brackets like this. All right, then we link to a variable, and we can click on the save button. Now let's go to our preview. You see here at the bottom that before the links were not set up properly. Now when we're going to refresh the page, all right, so here you have the links properly set up. So you can click on this, and now you're redirected to the specific page of the blog post. So you can see here that we have the post / and here the handle of the post. So let's go to the designer again. All right, so now we need to retrieve the information in the blog post page and fill in the page with that information. Now to do that, again, you might have guessed, we need to go to the page controller here. Now you might notice here that we have a new input here, an output actually to the page setup module, which is the URL match one. And this corresponds to the first asterisk in our URL, or the only asterisk in our URL, which corresponds to the handle of the current blog post. These other two are for users, so when a user has signed up to your project, but we're not using signups or logins right now, so you can discard them. So what we need to do now is to retrieve the data from the database. So we'll link it like this. And it's going to be again the posts module. However, this time for the filtering, we're going to filter to only retrieve a single post that we're going to define. And that post is going to be based on the handle here. So this will retrieve only the posts that have a handle that is equal to the value here, but we're not going to set a value here. Instead, we're going to use an input. So this will only retrieve the posts that have handle that is equal to an input that we'll set up in a few minutes. Now for the number of entries, we're only going to retrieve one blog post. For the sort field, we don't need to set up this because we only have one, so no need to sort the query. Let's click on OK. And now you see that we have a new input. So this is the value of the handle. And the value, as we said, is going to be the URL match one. So to recap, we're going to retrieve a post, a single post, that has a handle that is equal to the value here. All right, and now in the output, we have a single entry. We do not have an array of entries because we're only returning a single blog post. So we can do just like what we've done, store this blog post in a variable. And we're going to call the variable post. All right, now for the title, we go to the properties and we can link this title to the post.title. And we can click on link and save the page. Now let's go to our preview and let's refresh the page. Perfect. So we now see that the title was properly retrieved from the database. And now we basically need to set up all the other fields in our page, such as maybe we can add an author and the date. We can add an image. Then we can add, so for the actual article, for the summary, as I said, we're going to use Markdown. So Markdown is going to convert what we've written, so the hashtag, the asterisk for bold, italic, and so much more, into HTML code. So this will format our content. So let's add this again here. All right. Now let's add a little bit of styling here. So let's center this. This will be author and date. All right. And then for the banner or the image here, we can limit the height. So a maximum height of maybe 400 pixels. All right. Maybe it's already too much. So 360. All right. And we need again the image to cover the whole area. And here you see that there's some space in here. We need to get rid of that. So let's select the content element. And we can here go to inner margin. We can remove the default margin of the element. All right. All right, so now we have the title, the author, the date, here the image, and here the content of the article. So for the content, we might want to center it and limit the width of the element. So we can put a default width of 90%. All right. We can also center it by going to the content element and use the flex vertically and align elements to the center. All right. So as you see now we have aligned to the center, but the problem is that it's gonna make the elements have a minimal width. So instead we're gonna keep them to stretch, so they stretch. All right. But we're gonna click on this specific element and we're gonna align this one specifically to the center. All right. So now we can add some inner margins. (15 pixels). And yeah, for the width, we might also want to have a maximum width of maybe 800 pixels. All right, so the content will be this size. And if the screen is smaller than that, it's gonna take 90%. So the maximum width is 800 pixels, or 90% of the width. Perfect. So now we need to link these elements as we've done before. So we click on this one, we go to the content, and here we'll link to a variable. And this one is going to be, again, author dash, and then we have the date. So date created, and we can format it with relative time filter. All right, here we have the image, and this one is going to be post image. And here we have the article. So post.article. Perfect. So let's save, and let's go back to our preview, and let's refresh the page. Perfect. So now we have a working website. There's a few things that we might consider. So I'm going to adjust a little bit the margins here. And yeah, we'll start with that. So here, I'm going to select the content element. And I'm going to add an inner margin of 15 pixels on the top, 15 on the bottom. All right, maybe with this image as well, we can add 10 pixels, 10 pixels. Perfect. We could also maybe add some background to the actual content. Maybe a shadow. So something very small. And a border radius. Perfect. All right. So let's go back. All right, it's already much better. So if we go to, yeah, so here the logo is not clickable. I'm gonna make it clickable. That's very easy. We double click on the header, and here I'm gonna use a link text instead. So let's put this here. Let's type my blog. All right, and we can add the logo styling, and for the destination it's going to be the same page. So now we can just remove this one. All right, so refresh the page. All right, and now we can click on my blog like this, and now we are at the home page, and we can see the other article like this. All right, so we're pretty much done. Now a few things that we might look into. So the first one is that you might wonder here in the URL what's going to happen if we type in a non-existing handle. So something like this. So what's going to happen is that it's not going to fill the content because this element was not found. So what we need to do is to test if the article actually exists before showing this. So what we're going to do is select here the content element, and in the render conditionally property, we're going to say yes when a variable is true, and that variable is going to be the post variable. So this will render, so we're going to show the everything here, so the content and all its children, whenever the variable post exists. Now in case it doesn't exist, what we want is to show maybe an error message. So let's add another block here. All right, let's move it out of the content element. All right, it's going to be a content element as well. and this time you can add an error message, and it's going to be error 404, page not found. All right, and yeah, now this one must render conditionally when a variable is false, so when the post variable doesn't exist. All right, so let's try this. All right, so you see here that this post doesn't exist, so we see an error message. Let's go back, and here this post works. All right, so we are pretty much done here with this first tutorial. There's maybe a few things that we can still work on. So maybe we can try to center these two blog posts to the center of the page. Usually it's not a big deal because you have probably a dozen of articles, so we don't need to center them. But if you ever want to do that, probably need to click here on the wrapper, and yeah, so for the grid element, it's probably difficult if you want to do that. We might want to use the flex element if you want to achieve that. So I'm not going to do that because we're gonna have to start everything from scratch here, this whole setup. So instead I'm just going to leave it like this. Now something that we might be interested in doing is maybe adding a subscribe to our mailing list links, and that is very easy. You can go either to the blog post or to the simple or the homepage, and you can add a embed code here. So you can drag it like this, actually outside of the card wrapper. All right, and here basically you can go here in the properties of this element, and you can add your own HTML code, the embed code from MailChimp or any other tool you might use, and this will show a subscribe form here. So we're pretty much done with this tutorial. We have seen how to create very easily a blog in a matter of 45 minutes. We were able to create a very small and easy blog. We can link the data with the database. Actually here, we have seen how to retrieve the data from the database, how to link it with the individual card elements here, how to use the link to variable to create complex values, I guess. So here we have a kind of a formula here. And we've seen how to make dynamic pages here with the asterisk. And again, how to handle cases, for example, when the blog post doesn't exist. So thank you for watching. We might make future tutorials in which we improve on what we've built so far. We add more features. And if you have any questions or issues, feel free to contact us. So we are sketch.io. It's a very powerful tool that allows you to build platforms, websites, apps very easily. So it's great for an MVP, for a prototype, or even for production websites. So thank you for watching, and feel free to share this with your friends. And